Hi, my name is Dave Jacek. I'm a smart technology specialist at US Cellular. Our team partners with best-in-class hardware and software providers to offer solutions to business and government customers. Solutions that create efficiencies that improve the bottom line, like keeping first responders connected and helping communities thrive as smart cities. We're committed to helping all communities and businesses throughout Oregon stay connected with emerging technology. Technologies like fleet management, IoT sensors, and our data priority network, which was specifically built for public safety. We're excited to participate in this year's conference. It's a great opportunity to collaborate with local businesses and community leaders. Oregon is very important to US Cellular. We continue to invest in the network in order to provide the best user experience, and US Cellular was recognized again as one of the top businesses to work for throughout the entire state. Like many organizations, this pandemic has accelerated our own transformation to quickly adapt to this ever-changing climate. Please stop by our virtual booth during the next exhibitor break at 11:30. Take a look at some of our solutions and enter a chance to win a Dutch Bros gift card. We look forward to seeing you. Now, I'll hand it off to the panel of state leaders who will discuss lessons learned from the pandemic. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us this afternoon. You are in the session that is titled Pandemics Lesson Learned, and we're going to focus heavily on what we've learned here from the COVID-19 outbreak that hit all of America, and especially Oregon. We are one state, but we are very different in our topography, our geography, our demographics. Everyone has a little bit different perspective on how this pandemic unfolded here in Oregon, from the coast to east of the Cascades to Southern Oregon. We have you represented in this session. So I want to introduce, first of all, those participants who are with us today. Doug Wiggins is the city manager of Union. Doug, if you just want to give a wave. Greg Evans, Councilor Greg Evans, is from Eugene, past president immediate of the League of Oregon Cities. Brian Sotun is from the city of Medford. He is the city manager there. Brian, thank you for joining us. Arlene Burns from Mosier is covered here as a small city, has done quite a bit. Welcome to you. And finally, Mayor Henry Balanceifer, welcome to you from Warrenton. Has had his own challenges out there on the coast, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Today, I just want to start with an opening question, and I'll field this to each of you. Arlene, I think we'll start with you, Mayor. And first question is really, this has been something that's unprecedented, that really none of our communities have had to navigate before. We've had challenges that there is no playbook for, and we're kind of writing the rules as it goes. So what were some of the things that you found were either most effective or least effective as you kind of navigated this crisis? And I'll start with you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and with this group of folks, and I think this is a very worthy conversation to have that we can all learn from each other. First of all, Mosier is about an hour from Portland, so even though we're a tiny little town, we have a lot of traffic that comes from the city for folks wanting to escape to the beautiful National Scenic Area. So we have the Twin Tunnel Trail, and there was a question for a long time of whether there was a problem inside the tunnels with COVID in the air, if that was sort of a wind tunnel of COVID. We have a little city park, and we have a plateau trail, which is heavily used, especially by Portlanders. So one of the first things we did is we declared a state of emergency for the town, which enabled us to be more nimble throughout. And actually, just in the last city council meeting, we've extended it to the end of the year. I think that has been really helpful. And it also has set a tone for our town that we consider this a crisis ongoing. It's really tough to be able to navigate letting people into the town to do stuff. So the main ways we did were by closing our trails, by our little city park, state park, which is our access to the Columbia River, which is used by windsurfers and kiters. We have a gate across that. We've allowed access, but we put a sign that said only for locals or in the watershed. That was not really necessarily honored. However, people were in general kind of pretty okay about it, even though we really had no way to enforce it. But it was a little bit longer of a walk than just being able to drive in. So yeah, and I feel now that there's more testing available. We can be a little bit lighter on our feet, but we're by no means over this. You know, with our school, it's a charter school, so they're doing an online option right now still. So our restaurant has been functioning 3 nights a week, and they've had some struggles with people coming and kind of defying their request to wear masks. So there are still, you see these sort of partisan manifestations that are sort of ironic, because as a restaurant, you know, they want to be able to serve the community, and at the same time, you know, they're risking themselves by being open. And our little store, Mosier Market, has been just thriving because a lot of people have not been going to the larger towns to go shopping. So in general, as far as our economy for money coming into the city per se, I don't think we have suffered as much as other cities might have suffered who get a whole lot of money from a big event that got canceled. The only suffering perhaps is utility bills that have not been able to be paid.
People are really polarized on this issue, even to this day, to the fact that they don't want to wear masks or don't feel like they should be subjected to having to do that. And that's really putting cities in a precarious position as well. And I think we'll come back and touch on that. But I want to go to Warrenton now, out to the coast, to talk to Mayor Henry Balanceifer, who had a completely different experience, I think. And this is with the influx of people maybe that were coming to the coast because they were encouraged to go there. So he had a special balancing act to try to perform as well during this whole pandemic. So Mayor Balanceifer, what did you see during this whole event?
Well, it all kind of started with when the WHO declared the pandemic. It was like, okay, what's this going to mean? You know, are we going to see things? We weren't thinking things were going to get too bad until maybe like the Goonies 35th or something like that, when people would come from offshore countries, typically Asia, to come and visit in droves, thousands of people, you know, 13,000 people in a day type thing. And so we kind of were, yeah, we'll see, kind of wait and see. Once Washington Spring, so when that happened, we kind of dusted off our emergency operations plan. I asked legal to start kind of creating even though the EOP was old and we were in the process of redoing it, but it hadn't been redone. So there was certain aspects to it that were legally confusing, or at least ambiguous. And so I'd asked legal to start working on that, so that the commission knew its powers and staff knew its powers underneath that, and we could all be comfortable with that. Once Washington spring break hit, we started seeing people come down quite a bit. And then we started seeing news agencies start talking about how great it's at the coast and how I want to go camp at the coast. And there was a long discussion within, I call it the 5M, the 5 mayors group of Clatsop County. And we had this kind of, you know, can we do anything about visitors? Like, you have a freedom of travel, you have all these rights, and like, how do we manage that if we're going to have unprecedented droves of people just showing up, buying stuff in our stores, you know, taking out the local supply? There was already the TP shortage that had just started to kind of creep into the system, which was just ironic considering Juana Mill is just down the road and employs most of the county. So when Oregon spring break was just about to hit on that Friday, we'd already had about 2 weeks of legal research on it. And I'd asked them, what would it mean if we were to evict visitors? And so we looked into it, saw some, you know, a lot of case law in Oregon specifically, because, and so that I didn't want to issue an emergency declaration until there was an actual issue that I could like say there's a clear and present danger to the population based on what we know. And so some other cities had declared an emergency earlier, but hadn't done anything with that emergency declaration. And so we waited, and then that Friday, I decided I was going to call that meeting, and I thought that there was enough public pressure that would be on both the commission, and I thought enough commission support that Saturday we could call an emergency meeting and issue the eviction notice. So we did. So I gave about a Facebook Live address so that it reaches as many people as possible. And then that started, there was a lot of people trying to get in early. So what we did is we crafted it so that if you had KOA, there was a couple different businesses, I should say, that were, because we're the camping hub for the North Coast. We have one of the largest KOAs in North America. We have one of the largest campgrounds in the state. And so our town will triple in size, easy, during that time. And so we looked at that, and basically just decided that we were going to make it so that they were cheating the system by saying, oh, we'll just do residential. Now you're a 30-day contract to stay here. That's not covered under transient lodging. And so we said, if you didn't have a contract for 30 days prior to when the WHO declared a pandemic, you're going to. So we just made it a blanket statement, gave them 24 hours to leave. It, realistically, most people did leave, but it took about 48 hours to evacuate the city that way. And we kept closing and lodging establishments closed during that time until such time as we synchronized with the county to reopen. We also worked with League of Oregon Cities, and thank you on that, to address some of our local grocers' concerns. Some of the stores were starting to get pillaged, for lack of a better word, by folks coming down from Portland when there were shortages to just buy up stuff. And so anyways, we worked with LOC on closing bottle returns so that those grocery stores could have some breathing space to deal with what do we do with social distancing in customers. That was one of the trickier aspects to it, was the retail aspects of how do we deal with this. We kept our parks open. We closed campgrounds playgrounds when the governor's order issued that, but we kept outdoors open, and for a reason. We have a lot of outdoor space. We're the 11th largest city by square mileage in the state for, and a pretty thin population. So with visitors gone, we encourage people to get out. Our library provided delivery services for books to help keep our populations kind of entertained. I started up a story time with the mayor, and that was very popular, actually more so than I thought, channeling my Mr. Rogers, I guess you could say. It helped a lot. There was a differing communication strategies from different cities. So everyone was kind of, I was getting inquiries from Port Angeles, Washington, to Bandon, to Sisters, from constituents that were just, they happened to find a video that I had posted related to the pandemic. I was giving updates and wanted to know. And I think people in general were just desperate for information that wasn't suspect, from people that they felt like maybe they could trust. Because there was a lot of wild conspiracy theories, as kind of Arlene and Mike kind of mentioned, that were out there, misinformation. That was probably the biggest problem, I would say, that we had to conquer was, some would say, oh, there's an outbreak here. Or there was, it's like, no, it's safe. You can go there, just practice social distancing, wear your mask, But yeah, that's basically, what we did, get people outside and breathe some fresh air and get the visitors out.
I tell you, Mayor, you just unpacked a heck of a lot and brought up some really important points that not everything about this pandemic response was operational in nature, but it was the communication and the soft skills that really helped carry and provide residents with that sense of, I guess, calm and the messaging that would help them carry on. So I think you raised an incredibly important point about just how critical that piece of the response was. So I thank you for that input as well. I want to move all the way out to Union and bring in a city manager now from his perspective, the CEO of his city, and give this to Doug Wiggins. And Doug, what are some of the things that you saw out there? Obviously, quite a bit different than what you might see on the coast, but your perspective, nonetheless, is just as important to this response. So let's hear what you have.
Sure. As far as you guys, it came out to Eastern Oregon at a lot slower pace than it hit on the coast. And so a lot of our reactions out here, we got to take some notes off the coast. And that did help a little bit. For me, watching the OCCMA boards and watching what the coast is doing out there, that helped a lot in putting things together and being prepared because it came so much slower out here to us. We did enact an emergency just as the other towns did. That helped to free up the decision-making, streamline things a lot faster, free up some money to help our businesses and those types of things. I think the thing that affected us the most was when we had the large-scale outbreak that probably most of Oregon heard about through a church. And that was really probably when it set in out here of how dangerous that was, because prior to that we had one case in all of Union County. And then once that little mini explosion happened, it became a lot more serious out here. And then again, leaning off what I saw going across the managers boards and the discussions out there, it really helped out here for us to be prepared for it. And didn't do anything a lot different than anybody else has been saying. And rather than being redundant, I don't want to repeat it all, but it was just important to reach out and have that list serve out there and be able to reach out and to our colleagues and see what's happening, and then get a jump on it here before it became too much of a problem.
You know, Doug, before I leave you and go down south to Brian, you know, that super spreader event that you're talking about with the religious group, that must have been terrifying, because that spread like wildfire. What was going through your head in terms of how do we get our hands around this and how do we control that? What was that like for you running that city?
So for us, it was our next door neighbor, LeGrand, that had that church. And for us, you know, we worried how many in our community attend that church and may have been at the event. Of course, you know, HIPAA laws, and as they are, you can't get a lot of that information, which made it tough. A lot of our county head meetings, you know, were like, hey, we need help here. Can you let us know what we got in our town so that we can put out the message that, you know, we have a lot of people that were involved with that church and it's affecting us. That was the hard part, getting the information from CHD or the hospital, mainly due to the HIPAA violations. So you just have to watch the county numbers. Now, when the governor came out and OHA came out and they started releasing it by zip code, that helped a little bit. Of course, you know, we just went over 10 in our city just last week. So it's still 0 to 9. You're kind of like, well, do we have 0 or 1, or do we have 9? Or so it did make it a little tougher. But that super spreader event, it was a wake up call. And it was, for us, it was, I got worried here at work, you know, as far as our team, are we gonna have to shut down? Because prior to that, I know out on the West Coast, a lot of public agencies had shut down. We were doing a minimal, reduced labor force, half home, half at work, and rotating back and forth to, you know, how's this really gonna affect us now? And thankfully, it did not spread into our town as much as, say, the few other communities in the county.
Okay, Doug, lots of lessons learned there, and I think you handled it very well with the communication, which was key to getting this whole thing done. I do want to go down south now to the city of Medford, talk to Brian Shotu, who's the city manager there. And Brian, tell me a little bit about how it felt for you to handle this kind of, again, uncharted waters, unprecedented event, this pandemic.
Well, Mike, thank you, and thanks to everyone who's participating in this and those that are part of the conference. Yeah, I can tell you that, you know, being here for 16 and a half years now, coming from the Willamette Valley, is that you have to learn that we are isolated from the rest of the state, and we have to be incredibly self-sufficient. So we have nearly 600 employees with the city of Medford, and we began at the end of February when there was rumblings that, hey, this is going to maybe shut us down. And so using, as Doug said, the OCCMA listserver, some great information that came out. And so developing a telework policy for our employees so they can be able to have that ability to work from home and not have to worry about their jobs or being laid off at that point. Other things we did is created a temporary policy related to COVID about how we would handle it if somebody was tested or presumed to have COVID, and how that works with the federal laws. So a lot of integration between our HR department and our labor unions that was necessary to be able to do this. And then effectively communicating that to all of our employees. So we really worked hard internally to prepare for in the case that we would be shut down and have to stay home. The other thing is, when you talk about developing policies for employees, you have to list essential and non-essential employees. And those essential employees, obviously the public safety folks, other people that we needed in order to keep the day-to-day operations going, because I can tell you that when COVID hit, but development did not stop in Medford. We're still going full bore ahead in building homes and commercial and everything like that. So we had to make sure that we had a business continuation plan that people could access services. So we really worked on that. So when the shutdown came and there was just a handful of us here, the continued communication with our elected officials, we did a daily update to our elected officials, and we did a twice a week update to all of our employees, informing them of what was going on. Even though we didn't have great numbers down here in Jackson County meeting, a lot of people were infected with that. There was still the need to really do the isolation and follow the directions in order to prevent it from happening. So with the public, it was just kind of saying, yes, we understand that your rights may be in your mind being taken away from you, but we still are required to follow the governor's rules and regulations on that and supporting that. I would say the least effective thing out of all of this, and one of the things that I've learned, is trying to understand it on a daily, COVID on a daily basis, because everything was changing, sometimes within the first 3 weeks of this, every hour. And sitting there and trying to think, okay, well, we need to shift to here or move to that, was to just take a step back. And instead of trying to communicate every hour, is just letting our folks know that we're analyzing the information and data before we can go ahead and make an adjustment on that. And a lot of that had to go with when it came time to bring our employees back, is making sure that they knew they were safe. So trying to figure out something that no one else can really figure out or you can predict is probably the least effective thing you can do, and just manage the situation. And I had a great mentor tell me one time, take as much time as needed to make a decision depending on the gravity of the situation. And I think we did have some time during this to kind of step back and just see how it plays out, instead of trying to make decisions every hour.
Pause and reflect, and that's a great point. Take that time that you need before making those decisions. And there was not one aspect of community or city operations that wasn't affected by this. And I think the biggest impact, from my perspective, at least the loudest voice, was the retail, commercial, the economic impact that it had. And did you find that to be true, or did each have a different weight to you?
Well, I think, yeah, the business sector, there's no doubt. When you close down, and really we're a large tourism industry, and we had to shut down US Cellular Community Park, and that generates about $12 million of economic impact every year. That was a 2-month hit. But one of the things that, again, a lot of cities did this, is our council about a year ago decided to take all of our marijuana tax revenues and set it aside and to distribute that twice a year. And so basically our council had nearly $700,000 to be able to distribute as I would say, not a reaction to COVID, but to help. We gave almost actually $250,000 in small business loans. We gave $150,000 to nonprofits in order to provide meals and to provide a few things for people that were sheltered in. So yeah, and then it was great to find out that most of that was reimbursable once the state figured out how to go ahead and reimburse some of those monies. So yeah, the business community, obviously, again, because of our isolation, a lot of folks in Southern Oregon, we have to react to things that happen in the Portland metro area. And so sometimes it's really hard to explain that to our business community, and we're not seeing the same things.
Yeah, totally understandable. Brian, thanks for that perspective. I want to go one last place. That's to Central Oregon, to Eugene. Councilor Greg Evans, you have a whole different perspective on what happened and how things were handled in your community too. So can you give us a little bit of insight as to how you handled things there?
Well, yeah, Mike. As you know, we were back east, a number of us from League of Oregon Cities at the National League of Cities meeting in Washington, D.C. And someone or a couple of people that were in some committee meetings that I was in were diagnosed with the virus. So when I came back home and got off the plane, I called my wife and she said, "You can't come home. You better go get a hotel room." So yeah, I ended up spending the first couple of days of the pandemic in a hotel room in Springfield before my family got things arranged so that I could come home and then be isolated and quarantined for the last 12 days of my quarantine there. But just to kind of give you kind of a different perspective of how we reacted, because we are also heavily dependent upon, our tourism business, the University of Oregon. I work at Lane Community College, which is another large employer here in town. So everything, just stopped in place. So, we were, when I say we, I mean the University of Oregon. We were on our way to two NCAA tournaments in basketball. Those were truncated. So we didn't have tournaments, and we didn't have our first round tournament in Eugene for the women's team, but we were all looking forward to having victories in both areas. Our schools, of course, shut down as well. My daughter is 15 and she's a freshman now she's a sophomore at Willamette High School. And they were just ending their basketball season and getting ready to go into softball, and they couldn't do softball. So, everything just stopped. But, our fire department, which is combined with the Springfield Fire Department, we have a Eugene Springfield combined department, did an outstanding job in responding to the crisis. We also had large issues with the number of people that we have that are homeless. So we had to react to that, and we had to react really quickly. And we worked with Lane County to set up temporary shelters for people who did not have shelter. We've got a lot of people on the street, but we had to, find a place for at least some of them to be. So we opened up for the city of Eugene, our community centers, able to open up the parking lots, able to get people to be able to camp in those places, as well as the Lane County Fairgrounds too. Our economic hit has been demonstrable. I've spoken with several small business people who were right on the edge until the governor put out her order of, no evictions. There were people who were in really panic mode that were, were afraid that they could not make, or probably could not make, their next rent payments on their businesses. Same thing with people in their homes and all the rest of that. So the stopgaps that came into play vis-a-vis the state and federal government were incredibly important to keeping us afloat during this crisis time. The small business people that I've talked to, and mostly these are people in the retail area and restaurants, were really hurting. When we had the stay-in-place order, everybody had to shut down, and nothing was opened up. And so a lot of my folks lost a lot of revenue. I did a lot of hand-holding, as well as my colleagues on council and the mayor, but they're still in trouble right now. We didn't have as big of an outbreak here in Eugene, Springfield. It was mostly up on, up in the Tri-County area. But so we didn't have a lot of testing going on. We couldn't get our PPE in. That was real, challenging for us. You know, it threw us for a loop. We really had to react very quickly, and our city staff stepped up to the plate and they hit the ball out of the park. So, and some of the rest of you probably know our new city manager, Sarah Maderi. John Reese had retired just before this thing had come out. Sarah was the interim city manager, and we made her the permanent city manager just before this thing broke out. And she's been with the organization for 25 years. So she moved into this rather seamlessly. And our staff was able to respond in tremendous proactive ways that made the impact of this a little more palatable than in some other places. So we're really proud of the work that we've done and the work that we continue to do. You know, we're still all in this virtual sphere where we're, you know, meeting on Zoom. And by the way, I've come to hate Zoom right now. I can't stand it anymore. But you know, you know, we've been able to react, you know, in a very positive and affirmative way. But I'm really worried about some of our businesses, particularly those restaurants, and the people who, you know, basically lost their jobs immediately when this hit. So that's making a big impact on our economy and our ability to sustain ourselves, because we are so dependent on both the university, the community college, the public sector, and in particular, our tourism business, because, you know, we had to cancel the Olympic trials. We had to move back the World Track and Field Championships to 2021. You know, and everybody, our schools, everybody had to do a pivot. So it's been challenging, but I think that we've stepped up to the plate and we've made the adjustments. And like someone just said earlier, it's been a day-to-day thing, and now you know, we're trying to make sure that we move to the other side of this, and we're prepared to do that.
My takeaway, two things, Greg. First of all, John Reese has impeccable timing in terms of retirement. I love that man, but that was quite amazing and quite fortunate for him, I guess, in one respect. The second takeaway I had from you was pivot. The ability to pivot has been essential in this, and think on your feet. I want to close. We have about 10 minutes left, a little bit less. I want to go around one more time, very brief answers. But my question to you is, there are some things that you probably would do different. But in the end, do you think this better sets you up for the next disaster, God forbid, when that happens, and if that happens? We just got through with wildfires. But did this experience tee you up in terms of being better prepared to go into something quicker and maybe more capably the next time it happens? And I'll start with you, Mayor Burns.
Well, Mosier seems to get its share of disasters. We're sort of the master of disasters, from the 2009 fire that was conflagration, and then the 2016 train fire. And I think one thing that's kind of ironic is now everybody's like, okay, now we can go back to normal, as if the virus is now the normal without the threat of impending, you know, devastation from the fires. So I think it's, one, it's given us all a place to appreciate what we have. I think it's super important to have leadership from the state level that's giving a universal message, because it's very difficult for individual businesses to try to make a mandate if the state isn't doing that. And I know there was pushback there. And I know that for the state, it's problematic when some towns are really isolated and some are cities. So I think, and the communication system to get people on these alert so they can be contacted by the sheriff's office for any kind of thing. I think we're doing another drive after our fire to say, okay, everybody sign up for this, because it's the best way. And also our regional newsletter, which is sort of in our valley, has become really a great tool for whether it's looking for goats that got lost or dogs, or, hey, this person is in need. So I think tuning our community into some central communication elements have been Yeah, but yeah, it's like, what's next now? Everybody's just like, okay, you know, can it get worse? Yes. What could be next? Who knows? But here we are. So
Great takeaways. Great takeaways. Thank you, Mayor Burns. I want to go to Warrenton now, and Mayor Balanceifer, your takeaways from this this pandemic.
Well, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just different people at a different time. I think that the pandemic's not readily translatable to some things like maybe a fire. I don't know, I can't say that, but just from looking at what other folks have had to deal with. But I will say that it does help expose what issues you have in your existing emergency operations plans, what did you not even use or need or follow, and what authorities you do need to have, and what legal research needs to be done to make that executable. And so I would say that kind of the other important thing is, and one thing that we haven't done yet because we're not out of the pandemic yet, but is to have a regional kind of roundtable with the 5M, the mayors of the Clatsop County, because we all kind of tried to synchronize together. We weren't able to hold all of our city councils on the same page. South County went a different route, but it's important to kind of have a debrief and see, okay, what worked, what didn't, you know, what was the issue? Is that something that would be translatable to something that transmitted by a different medium, you know, than aerosols? So, you know, I think it's just important to have that. I think also one of the few things that the unsung heroes of this whole thing was air freight. Few people realized how much airports were used to transport needed supplies and stuff when you couldn't get anywhere else. And we were fortunate to have one, and a UPS hub here as well. And when, you know, there was a lot of, I knew that there was like food supplies, certain things were, insurance companies were telling truckers they weren't going to insure them anymore if they carried food in the area. And so there was a lot of supply disruptions that could have been preventable on a state or federal level that we couldn't deal with, but we had an airport to get around that in some cases. So, but that's the thing I would say is it's important also to have community leaders, be it the mayor or a pastor or whoever's kind of seen as one of the kind of leading figures of the cities, that they step up and they communicate to the people, because as much as I love my staff, they're not the ones that typically are looked to communicate that information. People are looking, when crisis comes, they're looking to their leaders that they chose or otherwise rely on trust to give them information. And I would say that with how much misinformation is now readily available on people's phones and on social media, it's more important than ever for folks to zealously guard their reputations, their credibility, and to provide verified information the best they can and own up when there's bad information. And, you know, and just admit that.
There was a lot there. You just unpacked a lot. And I hear you loud and clear. This was not a one-size-fits-all disaster. It certainly was different for every single community, and everybody had to go through something differently. So some good takeaways there, and I thank you for that perspective very, very much. I want to go out to Doug in Union and get your perspective on what your takeaways may have been from this, things that we could maybe carry forward to the next disaster when that happens.
So for us being in a small city, a lot of times our EOPs aren't up to date, and they you don't have the staff that's keeping up with it or those types of things. You rely a lot on coordinating with the county emergency management and working through their plans. And obviously, I think the biggest takeaway I came of it is looking at our past EOP. Definitely updates need to be done. I hope to see maybe the state will work at putting out some monies, especially to the small cities, to help with updating our EOPs and getting them more in line for these type of pandemics. You know, we all plan for big natural disasters, but I don't know that we have ever planned for these things and do the tabletop exercises for this, and that's important. The other big takeaway, the biggest takeaway, was communication. Just keeping the lines open between your community, between your counselors, your mayors, and getting the right information, sifting. I felt my job a lot was sifting through the information to get the right information out. And because as Henry said, there's so much out there on the phone, on the internet, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, that it's just important to sift through and get the reliable information and make sure that's the message that's getting out to people to keep the message strong.
I hear you, Doug. It's tough to synthesize all that and kind of be, aggregated down to something that people can easily digest. Not an easy chore. Thank you very much for your perspective as well. Down to Medford again. Brian, what were your takeaways and anything that we can maybe carry forward as we move forward?
Yeah, sure. We really have been in a state of emergency, obviously, since the end of March. So we moved from COVID to social issues, and some of the demonstrations that are happening have been very peaceful here in Southern Oregon. And I think hopefully we're going to have a good collaborative dialogue on that. Back into more of a COVID, and now the Alameda fires that impacted Phoenix and Talent so greatly, and trying to help those individuals. So regional collaboration really came to the forefront for us, as we need our counties to really be more, I'd say, encompassed with our cities and more collaborative that way. And I know we got a lot of elected officials on the panel right here, and those that are going to be part of this. I understand, and I really appreciate what's been said about integrity and you as elected officials and the transparency for all of your citizens. But one thing I want you to be keenly aware of is, if you're tired, staff is about 10 to 15 times more wore out. And not only the things that we do on a daily basis, but adding all of this to it. And the problem is that we can't travel anywhere and go do anything. So I believe our mental health for our staff, I'm very concerned about that, as being able to take care of our staff and have some kindness, compassion, and understanding we're going to have to address this even after COVID is gone.
Yes, excellent perspective. I mean, tensions are high. They're going to continue to run high. Being sequestered at home with the inability to travel, all that matters. And I empathize with what you're saying about staff. I realize it. I see it in our own organization. These folks have been running 7/24, just as you have. And I want to thank you for your leadership. And let's go to Eugene. I want to give the closing word to our favorite counselor, Greg Evans. Greg, takeaways from this, ways we can translate this to maybe future events. God help us.
Well, there's a couple of things, and I agree with Brian. Our staffs are just worn out. All of us in the public sector have taken on a lot over the last few months, and it's been steady. There hasn't really been a break or any relief for it. But one of the things I really want to point out is our financial stewardship. In the city of Eugene, John Reese left us in great shape, and Sarah has been able to continue that. We've taken some big hits with responding to this and spending money that we were not intending to spend on this epidemic. So we're still counting how much we have spent on it, and we haven't come up to a final figure yet, but it's going to have a dramatic impact on our budgeting for not only the next year, but in years down the line. And you add on top of that the governor and the legislature decided to cut our budget for this biennium about 17%, has another big impact on us too. So while we have been, state assisted for many, many years, it's going to be very difficult over the next 2, 3, 4 years to get any kind of firm, steady support from our state government. So it's the financial aspects that, one, I'm very proud of the way that we have handled our money so that we're able to respond to this in a positive way. But two, we have a lot of financial uncertainty because of it. Remember, we have had 3 crises hit us at the same time. We've had the pandemic. We have had a huge loss in terms of our employment basis all over the country, but particularly here in Oregon. A lot of people are unemployed. And then you have the George Floyd situation that has triggered a lot of social unrest across the country. I mean, here in Eugene, we had a riot here, a mini riot. One of our shopping plazas was burned down, basically destroyed. But we've been able to, pull the community together and try to, we're still working through things, but we're reacting to this, I think, in a manner that is going to get us to the other side in a positive fashion and not negatively. So people have come together. We're working together. And we really have to be vigilant about how much money we're going to have to spend as this continues. And then even after the pandemic is over, what are going to be our budgetary impacts that are impact what we can do in the future? Because we got a lot of projects on the table, but some of which we will not be able to support in the future. And it's going to be real difficult to deliver the projects that people expected us to deliver on before the pandemic.
But I hear the optimism in your voice, and we're resilient. Well, we're Oregonians, and we're going to get through this. It may be a long recovery. We know that. And I think we're ready for it because we are Oregon. So I want to thank everybody, Councilor Evans, Mayor Burns, Mayor Balanceifer, Brian down there in Medford, and Doug in Union. Really appreciate you all being on this. I think it's an important topic, obviously, and we only had a limited amount of time to really unpack a whole lot. So I hope you all got a lot out of this, and I really appreciate all your inputs. It was enlightening for me, and hopefully there are some questions for you as well. Until then, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.